Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and in this episode, we're going to continue talking through 5 more players that I see as potential sell candidates for our Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues as we enter into the 2022 offseason here. If you're wanting to go check out my other sell episode, I do have that posted. If you head on over to my channel, click the subscribe button. If you're new around here, and head to playlists, I have a Dynasty 2022 Fantasy Football section where you can find all of my videos that I've posted so far for the 2022 offseason, including 2 buy videos, and this being now my second sell episode. We do have another one. I'm really excited to keep diving into content this offseason now that we've got rookies into databases like Sleeper and whatnot. We're going to be doing some more rookie mock drafts as well as some startup mocks all offseason long. So again, click that subscribe button if you're new around here. We've got a lot of great stuff in store for this offseason. But we're talking some sell candidates. Again, as I've said a couple times here, let's not waste any more time and let's get started. One more quick note before I get started here. I've been trying to make note of this in every one of my episodes this offseason, but we do have a community Discord server. If you want to go check that out, the link to that is in the description of today's episode. You can join the SFS Dynasty community, interact with myself and other players, and we're just trying to build that thing up and get some more involvement and activity on there. That's where I'll be sending out invites to mock drafts this offseason, whether that is that rookie or potential startup Dynasty mock, or even the potential of doing a 2022 redraft mock draft as we make our way towards this summer. So go check that out. It'll be a lot of good stuff in there throughout this offseason. The first player I want to talk about today as a potential sell candidate, I do have him rostered in one of my Dynasty leagues, is Chase Edmonds. Formerly, I guess you could say, of the Arizona Cardinals. That's where he's played his past 4 seasons in the National Football League. Obviously, he was drafted there to begin with, but he found himself in a bit of a 1-2 punch this season with James Conner. James Conner obviously played a much more prevalent role than I think a lot of us gave him credit for last offseason or perhaps anticipated. But Conner's involvement in the red zone is really what stuck out here and has really been the major Achilles heel and the thing we frequently and constantly come back to as it relates to Chase Edmonds' fantasy value and what he could potentially be. The main reason now, of course, that I'm looking to sell Chase Edmonds is not only because of the limitations in his NFL usage, and that's obviously the fact that the Cardinals throughout his first 4 years have been very reluctant to give him goal line opportunities and to use him as a feature back on the goal line. That's how James Conner was amongst the top in the National Football League in red zone rushing touchdowns this season. Is because Chase Edmonds, as a smaller back, only 5'9", 209 is what he's listed at, is just not going to get the job done as a power rusher. So he mainly resorts to needing a premium level of efficiency on his rushing attempts and having involvement in the passing game. But the longer the season went on, we saw Chase Edmonds miss some time due to injury. James Conner secured more and more of that workload as well. And that's kind of where things start to get a bit complicated. I think that the upside for Chase Edmonds going forward is incredibly limited. I really like the skill set he has. I like the potential, but that's just not how we've seen him used, again, through the first 4 years he's been here in the National Football League. The other main aspect that we need to touch on here today is that both Chase Edmonds and James Conner are impending free agents. And if I was the Arizona Cardinals, I think that based off of what James Conner showed me this season and based off of the work he did in the receiving game, having multiple one-handed grabs, that's not obviously the most important factor, but he's a very competent pass catcher. He would be the priority back for me to bring back to this team and re-sign for my offense and my roster going forward. That doesn't mean that both of these players couldn't potentially return to this backfield, and that doesn't mean 100% that James Conner will be returning to the Arizona Cardinals, as neither of these players have been locked back up by the team as of right now, the time I'm recording this episode, which will probably be the evening before it goes live. It'll probably be going live Monday morning, February 7th. So Chase Edmonds here, again, is someone who, if he isn't re-signed by the Cardinals, or if he finds himself in a situation where Arizona does re-sign him as well as James Conner, I just don't see any potential situation where he could be used as a workhorse running back. And that's obviously the main goal. When you're looking for a fantasy football running back, you want someone who's going to get a high volume of touches, someone who's going to get those red zone opportunities and have the potential to put up elite ceiling numbers. And it's just become clear and evident to this point that that's not something that's been in store for Chase Edmonds to this point in his NFL career. And again, as an impending free agent at one of the I don't want to say this, but one of the least valuable NFL positions, whereas running backs seem to just grow on trees these days and you can sign someone off the street. We saw the Lions do it a couple times this year and find a player who takes 25 plus touches in a game. It's just not a situation where you feel good about Chase Edmonds signing with another team and finding himself in a lead back situation. So I'm looking to sell Chase Edmonds if you can get some sort of refutable draft capital in return for him, or another player with better upside. I think that James Conner is the back to own right now for that Arizona backfield, but again, it is occupied by impending free agents here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the Kansas City Chiefs, another one I'm looking to sell. Again, a smaller running back. And we see now, as Clyde is entering into year number 3 with the Kansas City offense, that he also is not really in store or having the opportunity to receive a full workload of workhorse running back type load. And of course, we've seen Clyde struggle this season. What really was the tipping point for me was the lost fumble against the Baltimore Ravens, where he basically fumbled the game away, gave the Ravens the opportunity to win that one. Is that after that, he never really quite played the same. He played physical, he plays larger than his size, and I'll give him credit for that. But now he's covering the football with 2 hands at all times. He's not necessarily getting out in space and being used in an explosive fashion. And the main concern to me is for someone who is looked at LSU coming out of college as a premier and elite NFL level receiving threat out of the backfield. He is arguably at bare minimum, or I should say his upside, is he's the number 2 option in the passing game out of the backfield for this Chiefs team, maybe even number 3. And that's because of the emergence of not only Jerick McKinnon, but Darrell Williams as pass catchers. Now, the big thing that could potentially swing this the other direction and make Clyde somewhat of a steal for next season is the fact that Jerick McKinnon's a free agent and he could potentially not be retained by the team. So Clyde could potentially bounce back up the pecking order a little bit, and you could see him receive some of that involvement going forward. And obviously for a team that invested the first-round draft capital, drafting him 32nd overall to end out the opening night, round 1 of Clyde's 2020 draft class, there is the potential that they want to work him in more and use him more because he is a talented player. He does have upside. He does have potential. But this season was very frustrating. It was very concerning. I projected going into last year. I was someone who was absolutely not drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I owned 0 shares of him last year. But again, going forward, this is a situation that looks continually less and less optimal. So I'm looking to move off of him if you do have shares in your Dynasty League. He's still a young running back. He still has talent and potential, which I think is how you're going to pull your value in the trade market. But if obviously your league mates have been watching, it's been a bumpy road, and there is a chance you might not get the best return on investment here if you're looking to sell Clyde. Mike Evans here, the wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is the next guy up on the list here, and this one's plain and simple. I'm also going to mention Rob Gronkowski while I'm talking about the Tampa Bay offense, but losing Tom Brady is such a hit to this team. It's such a hit to the receivers and the pass catchers in this offense in terms of what their value looks like long-term as a Buccaneer, because as for now, the passing situation, the signal caller for this team is a big unknown. We have absolutely no idea. It could be anyone from Aaron Rodgers, probably one of the least likely situations, and that's absolutely not something I'm going to bet on, to maybe more realistic options like a Jimmy G or another veteran quarterback of that middling status, or it could potentially be a rookie, or it could be, you never know, you could come out here and end up having Kyle Trask step into the fold as the starter for next year. So there's a large spectrum of possible situations, and while Mike Evans is still age 28, while he's coming off of yet another 1,000-yard receiving season, while he does have the talent that speaks for itself, I'm going to look to move off of him here. And chances are, and I will acknowledge just putting this in today's video, that you were probably better off if you sold him immediately prior to or directly after that Tom Brady news hit. Obviously, the longer we get away from that moment in time and the more light we have shed on this Tampa quarterback situation, probably the less you're going to be able to command on the open market for a Mike Evans. I just think it's something we got to move off of here. He's going to be turning 29 this August, and he's probably approaching the end of his prime. Larger receivers are going to see that physical play start to deteriorate their prime a lot quicker. Just ask Julio Jones. So definitely not the exact same type of player. Julio is a lot more of a route runner and obviously was one of the best receivers of the 2010s. But Mike Evans has a really great claim to his own talent and his success with. I think it's now up to 7 or 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and obviously we all know what he can do in the red zone. So Mike Evans, another name I'm looking to sell. Gronk, I talked about him or touched on him. I'll talk about him for just a second here. Obviously, there is, again, with Rob Gronkowski, no more Tom Brady, a wide variety of changes that could be in his situation for next season. Gronk did come out and say that he would consider returning to the NFL this year, even if Tom wasn't a member of the team. But obviously, that's not for the best. You talk about someone who has the ultimate chemistry with Rob Gronkowski and his quarterback for his entire career in the National Football League. Now leaving, that's going to be a change. It's going to be an adjustment. And I think that things can only really get worse from here. Gronk, in terms of being a dynasty asset, was already someone we looked at as having a short shelf life and not being someone to rely on long-term in your lineups. And I would say the chances of him moving into a situation where he could have a deteriorating quarterback situation are probably a lot more likely than they are that he would go somewhere in which he would have an upgrade at that position, because there's only a few names talking about the Mahomeses, which is almost a guarantee he does not end up in Kansas City with Travis Kelce. Buffalo probably doesn't need him anymore after the emergence of a Dawson Knox. Green Bay is probably not going to be a suitor of Rob Gronkowski if Aaron Rodgers returns, and it would just be a mess. So Rob Gronkowski ultimately could walk away from the game as well. It's something that I haven't touched on yet, but he could potentially decide in a couple weeks or a month or whatever it is that he simply wants to retire, and moving off of him, you could get something, if not just having him sit on your roster, retire, and leave you with nothing. So this Tampa Bay situation is really tricky right now. It's one of the most interesting fantasy worlds to explore here as we enter into the 2022 offseason. Another running back I want to talk about as a sell candidate is Rashaad Penny of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Rashaad Penny, like a Chase Edmonds, is an impending free agent, so we don't technically know where he's going to play next year. The Seahawks do have Chris Carson under contract for one more year, which to me, when Chris Carson is healthy, he is the guy. However, when we've seen in very rare spots these two players healthy and on the field together, they've been sort of a 1-2 punch. They've been dynamic. They've really helped Seattle's run game be a formidable force. But what you're not going to get here from Rashaad Penny is the white-hot end that he had to the 2021 season as a recurrence going forward. Rashaad Penny is a complimentary back. He's pretty much a bust at this point, being a former first-round draft pick, being widely unavailable in a lot of contests. He just can't stay healthy. In the 65 potential games he's had throughout his NFL career, here in his first 4 seasons, he's played in just 37 of them. That's 56.9% of his games. Again, a very underwhelming margin when you consider less than 60% of those games he's actually been healthy and suited up for. But man, the end stretch, you see the talent, you see why they want to have him around in Seattle. We'll see if they ultimately re-sign him. There is the potential that the hot end he had to the season might bump up his market price and his market value, making it harder for the team to return him. But 17 for $135 and a touchdown against Chicago, 25 for 170 and 2 touchdowns against Detroit, 23 for $190 and a touchdown versus Arizona. And that was, again, all in relief of Chris Carson, who had been out for a long period of time with that neck injury to that point. And then they basically started to fade out of that committee system that they were running with Alex Collins and other names throughout the backstretch of the season. So Rashaad Penny, again, someone I look at as a depreciating asset, not somebody I would look to retain on my roster for next year. And again, Chris Carson will be back in 2022, hopefully healthy. And at best, if they do bring Penny back, I see it as a 1-2 punch, and much less likely that Rashaad Penny has any sort of that workhorse style that we saw over the last month of the 2021 season. So moving off of Rashaad Penny, whatever you can get for him. Again, he is a free agent, so it's very possible, like a Chase Edmonds, that he ends up somewhere new. And I think that if he returns to a situation, much like I described with Chase Edmonds, I think that that situation for his fantasy value will be even lesser potentially than it was in 2021. And then finally here, Aaron Rodgers. And I understand that at this point, some of the names in this list don't exactly command the highest market price right now if you're looking to sell, but they are still players that I would test the market, see what you can get for them in return. Obviously, you're not going to want to sell these players for a bag of chips, but if you can get a respectable offer, these are players that, again, I think are depreciating assets. That's the main thing that I want to focus on here for today's episode is that I think that the outlooks for these players are either very limited in the long-term perspective or immediately could be a situation in 2022 that's a lot less favorable. Maybe they don't have as much expectancy for their prime left on the table. That's someone I would look at, a Mike Evans or an Aaron Rodgers here when you talk about a 38-year-old quarterback who has been mulling retirement for the last 2 off seasons, and is really someone whose future is widely up in the air at this point. Right now, we have absolutely no idea. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be a Green Bay Packer, a Denver Bronco, a Pittsburgh Steeler, or something else? He could go anywhere. He could demand a trade. He could simply retire tomorrow. We have no idea. So right now, as a current Aaron Rodgers owner in my Dynasty League, I'm looking to sell him for any quarterback that has some level of youth, maybe not as high of a ceiling as Aaron Rodgers long-term, but a situation with a quarterback that I can get a longer shelf life and just have potential to give me a return on investment long-term. For Rodgers, I would be surprised if he plays 2 or even 3 seasons here in the future. Who knows how much longer his prime is? Who knows what his situation is going to look like again as soon as next week, because retirement could happen at any second and he could be stepping away from the game in the very, very near future. So again, it's not like, especially in a 1 quarterback league, that you're going to get a haul for Aaron Rodgers in return because of the limited value of the quarterback position, because of the age, because of the retirement rumors, because of the uncertainty and question marks circled with Aaron Rodgers. But again, these are 5 names today that I would consider. If you are looking to make any trades to move off of players in your Dynasty leagues, at least players to be aware of on your teams. At the very least, if you can't sell these guys and ship them out for better opportunities, to be thinking about and constantly reassessing their position on your rosters for next season. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Make sure to click that like button and click the subscribe button as well if you're new around here. We always are welcoming new members of the SFS community. And obviously go join that community Discord server to interact and engage with myself and other Dynasty Fantasy Football players. We'll be doing mock drafts again all off season long and diving into that stuff here until the start of the 2022 season. So thank you one more time, you guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.